Hello gamers! I've had some time now with Fallout 76 beta. After about 12 hours play, I've decided to take a stab at an unbiased review. Now remember, this is just my opinion, it may not reflect your own play experience. If it is different, definitely let me know down in the comments below. Now a little bit about me. I'm a fan of survival games and I've enjoyed the Fallout series, but I'm not as hardcore into the lore as most players out there. So this review comes from a more casual player's view instead of a long-time enthusiast. And personally, I do believe that I am the intended audience that Bethesda's been targeting with 76. Overall, it actually feels more like a shooter than a survival or an RPG. My initial expectations of what the game is supposed to be were met really right off the bat. The visuals were much better than I had seen previously, the draw distance was pretty damn good. The gameplay itself was about the same as I had expected. Playing it myself was a different experience being hands-on. Before we start into this, keep in mind that we were warned by Bethesda to expect bugs and wonky gameplay, but being so close to release, it's kind of a little bit unnerving. So for those of you on the edge, especially with a pre-order, cancel it if you can, wait to see where the game goes, as they have promised more content. My first impressions of the game was having to re-download the game an hour before release. Thank God my connection was fast enough, but unfortunately this wasn't the case for everybody. I was able to play it as soon as the bell hit, and when it loaded up, it stretched itself across 3 of my monitors, which took about 10 minutes to troubleshoot, finally settling on having to play it full screen. Windowed mode just wouldn't work for me, having a 4K resolution and 2 1080 monitors. If anyone does know how to solve that, please let me know down in the comments. I'd love to play windowed mode. I went through the settings and checked frame rates. There is no frame rate test that I could find, so I had to load in and out of the game several times, finally settling on high settings in 4K. Now this is running on a 7700K with the 1080 amp extreme and 32 gigabytes of RAM. But after about 25 minutes, I was able to actually play the game and run it. It was time to fire up the stream. The character creator, for me at least, was refreshing for Fallout. You didn't have to spend a ton of time messing around with it because you can customize your character at any time in the game. I didn't want to chew up my precious beta time just making the character as ugly as possible, which you know I'll actually do. In-game voice was the first thing I turned off. As soon as I loaded in the server, it was what you would fully expect of a multiplayer survival online game. We won't get into that. There is an option in audio to turn down the voice volume though, if you do wish to maybe hear a few other people but not have it so loud. Me though, I've played with enough shooters to know not to use it. Jumping into the game, I'd like to talk about the environment itself. I really like what they did with the art aspect of the map, simple and easy to read, and it didn't have a fog of war. After about 4 hours of walking around through it though, it does feel somehow smaller than what it's supposed to be, 4 times the size of Fallout 4. I actually found myself traversing a long distance pretty quickly, even with low skills. It seems to be there is a lot of empty space, but that could have just been me. The environment and graphics themselves were actually better than I thought they would be, considering the starting menu actually looked pretty poor compared to the actual in-game footage. Now this is probably due to the fact that I saw how poor the graphics were on console. I don't know if that's from a lack of polish, but honestly it did feel kind of lazy. There were some visual bugs such as random god rays with random shadows in them. That was pretty distracting. Even with all this in mind, I honestly kind of felt like Fallout 4 itself had better imagery and the environment felt a lot better. The one awesome thing this game has to offer though is the soundtrack. The composer Iron Zur did a great job on the music. Fantastic, really drew me in. Moving on to the enemies and animals you find in the world, this is where I think the game is really lacking. After about 12 hours, players literally killing the same scorched and feral morons over and over and over again. Oh yeah, you'll find a couple mongrels every once in a while too. Now there is other animals and stuff in the world and other enemies, but they don't seem to be as common as the other 2 main ones. Hopefully it gets more varied the further you go into the game or as they add in more content. The enemies were probably the worst feature of them all. All sorts of bugs popped up, like floating stiff bodies that hurt you when looking at them. Even during an event, they spawned literally right in front of me inside the room we were protecting. I really didn't understand the decision for them to avoid the NPCs in the game until I actually saw how the AI itself behaved. Now this is where I get really critical of the game. Let's not get started on the V.A.T.S system. It's probably the most awkward, laziest thing I've seen in a game in a while. When you use V.A.T.S, it locks the bullets, not the gun, to the character. You can be way off with your gun and it will hit your target. This also applies to PvP from what I've seen. The last thing that irritated me a bit was the fact that there are so many people running around. It was actually a little difficult to even find some enemies to kill with that horrible V.A.T system. Now the gameplay itself is what I found to be the real big issue here. Let's start off with questing and the quest lines. Being NPC free, each quest is stringed together by go here, find this, pick it up. When you do this, you also pick up a holo card, unless you go through the effort of picking everything else up but that object. And as soon as you pick that up, it'll start playing a very long-winded, boring audio log, which is louder than most of the other game sounds. Now, throw this in at the same time an event is happening, and it's absolute mayhem. All you hear is gunfire. If I had my voice on, people talking, the holotape going. I had no option to stop it, and I was forced to endure up to 7 minutes of some lady droning on about something. The lack of NPCs has also led to an absurd amount of terminals, tapes, and notes. Scratch that, a completely overwhelming amount. I personally found it really hard to get into the characters and the plates without them actually physically being there, leaving Fallout feeling emptier than it's actually supposed to feel, at least to me. Being real time, having to have your face in terminals and papers gets you ganked a lot and shot a lot, so it's really hard to really read and sit back and enjoy the lore in the game. At least we won't have to save any settlements, am I right? To sum that up, the quests are really uninspired. Your typical go get this, bring it here, find this type deal with shallow story. Instead of using an NPC to talk to you, you have to listen to an awkward audio log over top of everything else that's going on. There is no pause in this multiplayer game. Don't get shot trying to enjoy the lore. The gunplay is exactly what you'd expect of Bethesda. It's very clumsy and unsatisfying like it is in Fallout 4. This is pretty disappointing, to me at least, because this game feels more of a shooter, which now turns shooting into a core mechanic. Other Fallout games, I easily forgave that because the other content was strong, but they also locked guns and stuff too behind higher levels, but allow you to loot them at a lower level. Not the type of tease that I really appreciate. If I can loot a gun, I should be able to use that gun. The survival aspect of the game really isn't there at all. After about 30 minutes in the game, I forgot about hunger and thirst until it depleted completely, although you do get a health and wellness bonus for being well fed and hydrated. This is the only survival aspect of the game that I witnessed. If I'm wrong, feel free to let me know down in the comments. Perks have been completely redone. The basics are, as you level, you earn and apply your points in each perk, and every point will unlock a card slot. Cards are completely random in packs you earn, and can be swapped out and upgraded and replaced. But your perk points are permanent, so spend those wisely and try to find the best card set for your build. Mutations are one of the cooler things in the game. Each one will be unique and allow you to do something new, sometimes at a cost of something else. I had not witnessed any myself, but what I've seen, they're pretty damn cool. PvP isn't one thing I was really worried about, but I do think the systems they implemented can work out in the long run with maybe some tweaking. I do appreciate the way they've tackled it, but at the same time, I still think they should have done separate PvE or PvP servers. Once you reach level 5, other players will fall into 3 categories: stranger, allies, or enemies. Once you encounter someone, you can choose to ally them, ignore them, or engage in PvP. In order to engage in PvP, you have to damage the other player first. The first hit does a small amount of damage no matter what you use to indicate what you wish to fight. So if you hit them with an RPG to say you want to fight, you're not going to hit them with much damage. It's just going to bounce an RPG right off of them. The other player then has a choice to engage or ignore you. Once the other player damages back, both players are now on even grounds for damage. A level 40 player attacking a level 6 player will actually do the equal damage a level 6 would. So you can't really camp the spawn. Like if you go over there and you're shooting level 6 and he has a gun, you both are about on the same levels. If they or you choose to ignore the PvP, the aggressor will continue to do diminished returns on damage, allowing you to leave, go to another server, or port out to something like an event. If you're being harassed, you can also block them and they won't be able to see you on the map. Now this is good, but also why I think they should have just done separate servers. You're still going to get bugged as a PvE player, and you'll find PvP frustrating if everyone wants to just have a tea time together, you know what I mean? You're not going to be able to do any PvP. The building part of the game is the last aspect I wanted to cover. This system is almost identical to Fallout 4, but I found there were a lot more options and parts to build with than its predecessor, which is really nice. This is usually where I enjoy the long-term aspect of the game, even after my limited engagement with the game, is something I feel in 76 that's a late game goal. Trying to accomplish anything early is almost fruitless and would tie you up without reward. The only thing I can think of making is maybe like a mobile station so you can save the blueprints of your builds to instantly place at your camp, have a few workbenches you can use, and then move on your way again. The camp system itself isn't too bad. The building area is pretty generous, and you can almost place them anywhere on the map, which is something I actually wasn't expecting. I didn't have too much time to get into it, unfortunately, but I look forward to seeing what comes out of it. The controls for the game on PC, at least the version I played, were really horrible and clunky. It uses a console UI and all sorts of weird, awkward keys to accomplish tedious things like building. I really hope they improve on this in the future. I found myself looking for key prompts more often than not. The game itself, it does have a lot of potential and some great things to offer if Bethesda steps up and fixes the gameplay itself. Small improvements like being able to hear holotapes right in your own Pip-Boy itself instead of at a station, mod availability promised in the future with private servers, the transparent Quick Boy that pops up on your screen adapted for use in real-time gaming, and junk. Much junk. Tons of junk. Good junk. My junk. At this point in time, I am really overall disappointed in the release, but not surprised at the same time. I wanted to leave my preconceptions at the door and give the game a good go. I was proven wrong and proven right in some cases. Much rather have been proved completely wrong, but I'll take what we can get. I would recommend holding off on buying this title, especially if you have to choose between this one and another one. It'll save you the disappointment. But if you love Fallout and you like this type of game, go ahead and buy it. You'll probably get your money out of it. But as someone who plays survival games and enjoyed Fallout so far, I'd say wait. Pressure Bethesda into giving us some substance. Thanks for coming out, guys. Let me know how you feel down in the comments below. Feel free to join us on Discord and discuss things rationally in the Fallout category in real time, no pausing. Stay classy, everyone. Always back up them game saves, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.